A very warm welcome to everybody who's joining us today for this award event for the 2025 Jon Stallworthy Prize. My name is Julie Curtis, and for many years as a Fellow of Wolfson College here, specialising in fact in Russian literature, I had the privilege and the great pleasure of knowing Jon Stallworthy right up until his untimely death in 2014. He was a dear friend and colleague to many of us, a distinguished academic professor of English, and the author of many books, including studies of W.B. Yeats, Wilfred Owen, and Louis MacNeice. He was the editor of important anthologies of English literature. He was an occasional translator of Russian poetry, which is something we're able to discuss. And above all, he was a wonderful poet in his own right, with 7 volumes to his name. Another characteristic of Jon Stallworthy was that he was infinitely interested in the writing of others. He nurtured many young talents, and he was a very generous reader of and commenter on other people's manuscripts. After Jon Stallworthy's death in 2014, the then president of Wolfson College, Professor Dame Hermione Lee, set up the Jon Stallworthy Poetry Prize to honour his memory as a poet and as a much valued fellow of this college. With the kind approval of the family of Jon Stallworthy's close friend Seamus Heaney, a fund in the English faculty which was associated with Heaney was combined with other funding to launch the prize in 2016. And we're very delighted that fundraising efforts and very generous donations since then have now secured the endowment of the prize in perpetuity. This prize gives an opportunity for Oxford postgraduate students to submit their works in an annual competition to run in parallel with the Newdigate Prize, which is only open to undergraduate poets at the university. Each poet may submit up to 2 poems, not more than 40 lines in length, and the prize is hosted and run jointly by Wolfson College and the English faculty at Oxford. Each year, the shortlisted poems are published in a booklet as a very small print-run edition in volumes like that. If you wish to read them, you'll find copies in the English faculty library as well as in Wolfson College Library. Since its inception, one of the competition judges throughout has been Jon's very close friend, the poet and professor of English, Bernard O'Donoghue. His first fellow judge was Simon Armitage, then Alice Oswald, and now A.E. Stallings, all of them holders of the title of Professor of Poetry at the University of Oxford. And their insights and authority have provided a wonderful framework for the prize competition. The award ceremonies take place at Wolfson College on or around the 18th of January each year, which would have been Jon's birthday. We remember him all very affectionately this evening, knowing how much he would have relished the talented writers that this competition has elicited. I just want to make a few acknowledgements and thanks. So Professor Dame Hermione Lee, her successor as president of Wolfson, Sir Tim Hitchens, Professors Simon Armitage, Alice Oswald, Alicia Stallings, and Professor Bernard O'Donoghue, successive faculty board chairs in English, especially Professor Ros Ballister, and also the administrators of the English faculty. This year, again, my particular thanks go to Hope Lukonyomoy for all her efficient help with the arrangements for the competition. I'd also like to thank Steve Pearce of Filmshed for providing the technical support. And our first speaker this evening is going to be Sir Tim Hitchens, the president of Wolfson. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Julie, and welcome to the annual birthday party for Jon. And it's one of those fantastic moments of the year where we celebrate the poetry that's come from postgraduates. And of course, as we now know, there are more postgraduate students in Oxford than undergraduates. So time is on your side. The theme this year was opposites. And as always, it was taken up and imagined in so many different ways. It was appropriate that this year we heard poems about conflict in the Middle East. Only grass is hurt when 2 bulls lock horns like this. The theme took us to the origin stories in the Christian Bible, to Noah's Ark and a mourning dove or 2 with no safe place to roost, where things go naturally in couples. One poet used the theme to create a work jam-packed with hyphenated words, yoked together like magnets with opposites attracting. Another, picking up the inspiration of the title, describes how in nature silence comes when there are no obstacles to wind or water, and how it's the obstacles which produce the noise. I'm, as always, delighted that people have found so many different ways to react to the inspiration of the title. So it's my very great pleasure to invite Bernard to come up and offer his thoughts, first of all, on the poems that have been produced for us this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. I'm very pleased and honoured to be here again. It's a great occasion, I think, in the life of poetry in the university and Oxford generally. It's now very well established in the year's events. There are 61 entries this year, so the competition clearly remains popular among the graduate community. And as Tim said, the year's topic was opposites. Some entries didn't keep closely to the subject, but not always to their disadvantage, because the metaphorical implications of the idea were opened out. One entry took opposites attract, both as its title and its identifying motto. It's interesting to see what the recurrent themes and concerns are year by year. In a world riven by conflicts and environmental crises, the crucial opposites might have been expected to be of a public nature, and a few were. But it's always difficult to predict what the prevailing themes will be, or even the kinds of poem, public or personal, satirical or historical, religious or worldly. If I were asked to say of this year's poems what the abiding things were, I'd say the subjects tended to be reflective rather than lyrical. Similarly, the treatments were not predominantly determined by formality or structure. A few poems used the full 40 lines allowed to develop narrative or argument. Among them, a gripping political parable on alienation, in which the child narrator describes an invasion of their home by men from another country, coarse and hairy like the wild pigs in the forest. Other poems suggested opposition and conflict without labouring them. A poem called Without Obstacles began, as Tim mentioned it, with the haunting truth, wind is silent without obstacles, before following that thought through various environments and landscapes, both urban and rural. One of the most impressive things in the entry as a whole was an impressive internationalism, an openness to cultural diversity, perhaps predictable in the worldwide catchment of a graduate community. Patrick Kavanagh said that poetry is most reliably to be found in the local parish, the parochial. But there was particularly relatively little confinement to locality here. There was a wonderfully inventive ghazal like this, which brought together different cultures and languages brilliantly. Many of the most attractive poems had diverse settings, extending from a Faroese fishing village and Iceland to the Middle East and South America and Hong Kong. Connected with this, there was remarkable linguistic diversity from various Middle Eastern languages, whose diversity left their implicit political oppositions unlaboured, and from Sudanese to Afrikaans. In fact, reading them was a decidedly informative and life-enhancing process. A poem under a motto from Chaucer had a title from Irish, and remarkably there was little sense of strain in all this inventiveness. Several poems in these entries dwelt on large cosmological questions, the Milky Way set in a richly learned context, Castor and Pollux, meteor showers. There were other poems that took their inspiration from literary predecessors like Omar Khayyam or Shakespeare's Coriolanus. A poem called Negative Bliss was another remarkable series of mythic reflections, beginning with Hopkins or Dante's What I Do Is Me, For That I Came, and ending with Hopkins's dearest freshness, deep down things. As in previous years, we could have added substantially to the five prize winners and commended entries. Nearly all the entries showed a remarkable confidence and technical accomplishment. If I had to characterize this group in a single word, I would choose the rather unadventurous word, interesting. I think that what all these poems had in common was that they were compelling subjects. Next we'll hear the prize winners reading their poems, followed by Alicia analysing them and their virtues. So, Pauline.
Hi everyone, my name's Riley. I'm a DPhil student in English at Worcester College, and I can't be at the physical Stallworthy event because I'm privileged to be on the country of the Wadandi Noongar people in what we now call Western Australia, which is my home. I'm back for the break, and I'm here with my dog Clem, who insists on being in this video. I had my amazing supervisor, Professor Elika Burma, read for me at the event itself. She probably did a better job than I will, but this is for the YouTube video. So thanks to Elika. Also thanks to the faculty and to Wolfson College for running this prize, and to Professor Stalling and Professor O'Donoghue for their work in judging the prize too. And congratulations to whoever the winner is. I'm really excited to read the other shortlisted poems. So I will read now. My poem is called Without Obstacles, which I actually don't love as a title, but anyway, that's what it is. It's Without Obstacles, and it has an epigraph from Nadine Gordimer's The Conservationist. The river is extraordinarily strong, and it seems to have become silent. Nothing opposes it. In the poem. I wrote once a line I thought quite novel, in the obviousness of the truly revelatory. Wind is silent without obstacles, sketched on loose pages in the brief 25th floor apartment, above late red flashes of buildings layered haphazard across mauve skyline of a winter Buenos Aires. Making the most of a time impossibly far from home, on river plated bronze by silt and runoff tinged, nonetheless, quite homelike. By the bay like a mouth, the delta striped like a tiger, water was only murk, an over-nutrified rapidity, quiet solely found in the wild shell of graffiti-claimed hotel on the isle between the honey hives on tall wood stilts and the remainder of a flood-washed world. A village, bared to concrete, blue and cold as a dead crab shell. Sharp new rain soaked through our chitinous ponchos as we motored past eucalypt-lined pampa, replacing whatever comes first, in this south instance of density collapsing its networks, towards plantation shivering in breeze, then falling to bare field in fuel-drunk winters, warm pulp on 25th floor, where wind howls silent past the glass, across chairs, where my notebook lies for a moment when I thought my words would be safe, lining mill-pulp sheets above massive tree-free plain. I read that every line is predated, that my words oppose only themselves. Yet wind is silent, without tree or ear to ruffle its pressurized course, and still, in unfamiliar flurries, soundless in the 25th floor air, my paper flies sweetly over the street, towards lights, blinking a red warning, to quiet plains, negotiating unheard, strengthened gusts. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jordan Molly Preuss. I'm a DPhil student in classics at Merton College. Before there was land and sea, and sky that touches all, nature had only one face in the world, called chaos. Beginning. When it all started, there was nowhere to put anything. Whatever had been made, if it was made, would find itself adrift. Some unmoored stars, a mourning dove or two with no safe place to roost. Impatient flowers shooting towards a light so mixed with darkness they'd agreed to share a name and join their assets. Deep would sound the same as high, since the sublime was all one word, unplumbed by any line that gave above, below, their meaning, while the unembodied breath lay over all. But when the waters parted, there was space to land and distance. So much room to make a home in. We're still putting up new stairs and down new routes, each of their kind, in pairs.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Bilal Moin. I'm an MPhil student in economics at Reuben College. And the form of this poem is a ghazal, which was a sort of Persian Urdu style of poetry that was then sort of perfected in English by Agha Shahid Ali, the great Kashmiri poet. And this poem is dedicated to Khalid Jude, who was 9 years old. And as he slept, an airstrike claimed the lives of his mother, his father, his sister, and his extended family. Within a week of his family's passing, an airstrike took his life too. Ghazal 28, like this. With fragments borrowed from Bukowski, Rumi, Darwish, and Gopal Krishna Adiga. Only grass is hurt when two bulls lock horns like this. Even the sun was ashamed. Were we born like this? Galilee drowns in tears, swallowing aid into the abyss. Ashes fall like snowflakes, her scarf adorned like this. Mama is in heaven. Where is this promised garden? Her body lies beyond right and wrong, strewn like this. The cypress broke like a minaret, its bounty born of bone. Walls and watchtowers witnessed as hills were torn like this. A one-armed bandit, he played with Tom and Jerry cans, quiet as a ghost, his spirit a stubborn thorn like this. 9 years old, stuffing his mouth with a fistful of strawberries. The red lingers, and he's gone like this. Jacob's ladder once reached to heaven from here. Now he climbs over rubble, weary and worn like this. With blunt blades, these butchers scorn the sacred laws. Cain's curse carries. He's a sacrificial pawn like this. Scrawny drummer boy, David, you wield your sling. Born into Bedlam, who taught you to brawn like this? Cartographers conspire with their divide and rulers. Psych, Picot's lines were drawn and redrawn like this. But do you remember Mukharik, Baghdad's bazaars? It was never, no, I could have sworn, like this. When Moses raised his staff for the righteous, the Red Sea split, washing away Pharaoh like this. Sink into silence, bandage egos, nurse moral wounds. The eggheads crack omelets, and you yawn like this. The world's wounds fester, yet you scroll unscathed. Retweet. Resistance has been reduced to a form like this. Aflatun says, do something, brother. Whatever you do it quick. Mothers were not meant to mourn like this. Thank you.
I'm Riccardo Pacagnella, and I'm doing a DPhil in Sanskrit. And the poem is called Negative Bliss. Imagine if this nothingness could be something. Imagine something else than me. And now believe that numbers were a thing. And only you can see and bees can sting. Say, what I do is me, for that I came. And find another, something you can blame. Observe the snake and eagles flying high, and feel that overwhelming urge to cry. Then follow through and speak a lucid lie. Imagine if you ever could grow old and know the differences of hot and cold. If there were kings and knights, or trees and grass, if there were beauty, perfume, clothes, and class. But luckily, this negatives like love. And there's no under, middle, and above. And deep down things are dearest freshnesses, where silent love abides and turns to this, where nothing goes amiss, not peace, not bliss.
I'm Anna, and I read History of Art at Queen's. I wrote this poem under the motto Opposites Attract, but it doesn't have a title. The outcast, the bloom stilt, fresh free from the net mesh, free now from the clan guilt. The star-cross, the love lock, the musket and sword hilt, begrudging betrothed, like bean sprout, like patch quilt. My bounty, my blessing, my midnight, my bee sting, life lot, hearth fire, household, heartstring. Men's minds like fruit rinds, cat call and rough shod, but a verse barred, my vineyard, my life-longing pea pod. Thank you.
It's an honor to be here, and this is my second time that I've participated in this event, and I can say it's already one of my favorite things that I do at Oxford, and it's exciting to read the poems. I enjoy discussing them with Bernard, and in fact, this year we surprisingly came up with pretty much the same short lists, just being on the same page and discussing it, and then hearing the poets and learning who belongs to which poet. The judges read through the poetry submissions on the theme of opposites with interest and pleasure. The diversity of approaches to the theme and to poetry itself were cheering. We had persona poems in the voice of Grendel's mother and in the voice of Shakespeare's Coriolanus. On the technical front, we had sonnets and linked rubaiyat stanzas, blank verse and ghazals, as well as many species of free verse. If people are at all worried about a homogeneous sound or orthodox strategies for contemporary poetry, they needn't be. In no particular order, I will remark first on the three poems that we wished to commend. Ricardo Pacaniella's Negative Bliss, in a brace of 9-line stanzas made up of 6 couplets and a tercet. If there is a name for this, please let me know. Probably there is. Was transparent in its engagement with the theme and also delightful and attractive, as we heard in its rhymes and its arguments. The quotation from Hopkins sets us up for a closing tercet that is charming in the sense of working a charm, moving and magical, sealed in the last line with the kiss of an internal rhyme. And deep down things a dearest freshness is, where silent love abides and turns to this, where nothing goes amiss, not peace, not bliss. Perhaps the theme opposites does tend to elicit love poems. Anna Stewart Yeats's untitled poem came to us under the motto Opposites Attract, and really I think it works fine as the poem's title. Keep it. We appreciated it for its linguistic verve, its catchy rhythm and quirky flavor, skimming as close to cliche as it dared and then veering suddenly away. Star-crossed turned to star-cross, life-long to life-longing. This poet has a poet's idiosyncratic ear. Riley Folds, Without Obstacles, took the idea of opposites as including opposing and therefore in the way. The judges admired this poet's masterful marshalling of syntax and argument over line break and quatrain in a poem ostensibly about the wind and currents, but which manages also to address weather and climate and pollution, the over-nutrified rapidity of a river delta, to incorporate perfect particular descriptions, such as chitinous ponchos, and to perform a bit of an ars poetica to boot. The unheard strengthened gusts at the end of the poem perhaps have something in common with Keats's unheard melodies. In the case of Bilal Moin, our second place winner, we admired both of the poems submitted. One was an engaging ode on slippers stolen from a mosque, but we settled on Ghazal 28 like this. This poem impressed us with its technical finesse and its sweeping range of references. There are quotations in italics from Bukowski, Rumi, Darwish, and Gopala Krishna Adiga. The theme of opposites here pivots more perhaps on opponents, on opposing claims to contested land and spaces. It is the opening couplet that sets out this interpretation. Only grass is hurt when two bulls lock horns like this. Even the sun was ashamed. Were we born like this? The poet is delightfully inventive with rhymes and off-rhymes on the kafia, I'm not sure I pronounced that correctly, adorned, torn, sworn, but also brawn, pawn, redrawn. Like this also proves an infinitely adaptable deictic radif. He's gone like this, for instance, or the closing mourn like this, which shivers back up through the entire poem. Here are references to minarets and to David, who is in one of the many clever bits of wordplay in this poem, born in Bedlam. We might recall that Bedlam, with its sense of the pandemonium of an insane asylum, ultimately stems from an alternate pronunciation of Bethlehem and St. Mary Bethlehem Hospital. I learned many new things from the poem, yet perhaps I should have been able to guess that Furan in the couplet, when Moses raised his staff for the righteous, the Red Sea split, washing away Furan like this. Furan is the Quranic version of Pharaoh. Indeed, one of the intellectual pleasures and emotional depth charges of the poem are how Judaic and Islamic references, European and Middle Eastern anecdotes, and ancient texts and contemporary phrases like the lisping pun, retweet, jostle shoulders and go back and forth over the same territory. Yet for all the consummate intellectual wordplay, psych, Pico's lines were drawn and redrawn like this, tips us off to the secret Sykes-Picot treaty that divided up the Ottoman Empire and set us on the path of modern conflicts playing out to this day. The poem is grounded in the heart, in the suffering of real people. I write this on what I hope is the eve of a ceasefire and an end to wholesale slaughter and a return of hostages. So when I read the couplet, Aflatun says, "Do something, brother. Whatever you do it quick. Mothers were not meant to mourn like this." I answer, Inshallah, Amen. Our winning poem, you will have deduced, is by Jordan Mallet-Proust, a 15-line sonnet, that is, it feels like a sonnet to me, beginning, which leapt out at both the judges immediately as being a front runner and cemented that status during our discussion of mutual appreciation. Mallet-Proust submitted two pieces, the other also a fine specimen, but beginning has the advantage of being both an excellent poem and overt in its engagement with the theme. Proceeding from chaos to creation and from cosmic metaphysics to intimate love lyric, the poem subtly springs from both classical and biblical geneses. I appreciated its humorous domestic opening gambit. When it all started, there was nowhere to put anything. As if the problem with a formless void is that there are no shelves anywhere and a visit to IKEA is in order. I also admired the sleight of hand here of beginning with a line that need not at first be iambic pentameter, but is metrically ambiguous, a Frostian loose iambic. One of the delights of the poem is hearing the meter firm up as it goes along, and the faint sound echoes finally harmonize into rhyme until out of chaos and dissonance, we end up with a resolved chime of a rhymed iambic pentameter couplet. The poet does this through the suggestions of assonance, made, place, agreed, deep, sublime, line, space, make, undergirded by slant rhymes, stars, towards, while, all, before sticking the landing on stairs and pairs. Ingeniously, the poem performs the creation of order out of chaos. Beginning also wrestled directly with our theme of opposites. In the beginning, there is dark and light, but they are also so mixed together that they'd agreed to share a name and join their assets, a sort of celestial marriage. Light and dark, deep and high, above, below, are all designations that in the formless beginning are meaningless. It is creation itself that differentiates, and opposites that, as they are defined, stabilize and make room for differences and varieties. But when the waters parted, there was space to land and distance, so much room to make a home in. We're still putting up new stairs and down new roots, each of their kind, in pairs. I could go on at length about the brilliance and charm of this resolution, the sudden appearance of the couple, almost the appearance of Adam and Eve with that we. The we now has stairs going up and roots going down, and there's a wink too, maybe at the pairs of coupled creatures in the ark. We find ourselves in a domestic space where there is finally somewhere to put something, or even to put something down, as a poet does on the page. And I think now Jordan is invited to come up and read her winning poem. Oh. Yes, I do. Yes. Congratulations.
After that very kind and insightful analysis, I feel that I might be belaboring the point, but I'd like to make a remark now that I didn't make before when I read it, which is that one of the inspirations for this is that we are working on a loft conversion in our small 2-bedroom home. So the thing about shelves was precisely right. We've had a real problem with not enough space, with a 3-year-old son and me and my husband both being people who need somewhat more personal space than we have. And the stairs had just gone up, I think the week before I finished the poem. So it was present in my mind. Before there was land and sea and sky that touches all, nature had only one face in the world, called chaos. Beginning. When it all started, there was nowhere to put anything. Whatever had been made, if it was made, would find itself adrift. Some unmoored stars, a mourning dove or two with no safe place to roost, impatient flowers shooting towards a light so mixed with darkness they'd agreed to share a name and join their assets. Deep would sound the same as high, since the sublime was all one word, unplumbed by any line that gave above, below, their meaning, while the unembodied breath lay over all. But when the waters parted, there was space to land and distance. So much room to make a home in, we're still putting up new stairs and down new roots, each of their kind in pairs.
Well, many, many congratulations, of course, to Jordan for winning this prize. I should add that both last year and the year before, she was shortlisted for this prize. And indeed, last year, Riley Foles, the author of the first poem that was read by Elika Burma, was the winner. So obviously we're very excited that a group of fantastic postgraduate poets is taking shape in Oxford. And in fact, Jordan has also last year, been the winner of the Lord Alfred Douglas Memorial Prize as well. So this has been a really distinguished group of poets. Everybody who's seen the texts has been really impressed with the quality this year. Terrific, interesting poetry. So reaching the final round against such daunting competition is something very special. And I myself am particularly struck by how very well read the poems were this evening. And I think we could give everybody a round of applause. Thank you for terrific. So in this time of distressing world conflicts pitching ordinary people into opposing camps, I'd like to end today by sharing with you an extract from one of Jon Stallworthy's poems, because I hope that some of you will go on to read some of his poetry. This is an extract from his long poem Sky Horse of 2002, which was published in a collection called War Poet, which was published in the year of his death, 2014. And I think it fits nicely also with the theme of opposites. So Sky Horse is a long text made up of 11 sections, all inspired by the 3,000-year-old chalk figure of a white horse at Uffington, not very far away from Oxford. And each section captures a historical moment starting from the original ancient decision to carve the horse out in the first place. In section 9, which is prefixed with the phrase Home Guard 1940, the speaker describes how they've recently covered up the white horse with soil for fear that it would provide an orientation point for the Luftwaffe. And he talks of a Messerschmitt that was shot down right at that spot last night, almost completely destroying the pilot's corpse. And the speaker comments that, "Oh, there'll be many more like that, poor Kraut, and when we've dug them in, we'll dig you out." Section 10 is prefixed ex-Home Guard, 1946, and it reflects upon the pointlessness of mutual destruction, and it reads as follows. "You dug him in," they said. "You dig him out. You know where he is." That hurt, but they couldn't have known, and I couldn't explain. And if I had known what I know today, I wouldn't have said, standing here in the rain, "There'll be many more like that, poor Kraut." The spade that buried him can't resurrect a German airman known unto God. But since our Dresden news came through, I've given his grave a flower or two, hoping some German might not neglect an English airman known unto God. So thank you all for joining us this evening. We look forward to meeting you next year. Do come and join us in the College Cafe for a drink to celebrate this wonderful evening of poetry. Thank you very much.